Hey everybody, it's Matt. Welcome back to the Journey Church podcast. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you can automatically get our weekly episodes. And you might want to go ahead and subscribe to our Journey YouTube channel as well. You'll find messages, music, interviews, inspiring stories, and more for you all right there. Now, I hope this episode helps you take your next step in following Jesus.
I want to start with a question that's relevant to all of us, I think. It doesn't matter what you believe or don't believe or if you're a Jesus follower or not. This is something we all deal with in life. The question is simply this: where do you feel pressure in life? Because you feel some pressure at different points, don't you? So do I. Where do you feel pressure in life? It may be pressure to perform. It may be pressure to succeed. It may be pressure to be popular in some way or to be liked by a certain group of people. It may be pressure to measure up. The truth is, all of us look to someone, or all of us look to, in some cases, something to measure if we're okay. We all look to someone, or in some cases, a group of someones, to figure out if we have their approval and if we're okay in life. Now, that's just a human thing, right? We all know what that feels like, and I'm not sure most people ever outgrow that. For you, it may be, I don't know who this is specifically. It may be friends at school, or it may be some people you have at work that you care about or respect deeply. It may be a mentor who's invested in you and you just want to measure up and you want to make them proud. If you are somebody who oversees people at work and you really care about creating a great experience for them, it may be the people who report to you. You're like, I just want them to feel like I'm a great leader and I've got their back. So that may be something that creates some pressure for you. It may be the people in your fraternity or sorority. I mean, you got in there because you want another place where you felt like you belong, so it would make sense. It matters what they think about you and whether you feel like you're okay when you're with them. It could be, for some of you, it could be in family. It could be a mom or dad that you're trying to measure up to, and their approval means so much. You just want to know, and for some of you may have grown up not feeling like you had that, and so you want to get to the point where you feel like you have that. We won't talk about this one long. For some of you, it may be your father-in-law, because you have not measured up, so it's like, I don't know that I'll ever win that one, but you weren't good enough for his daughter. But anyway, that may be the deal for you. Some of you moms can relate to this. I hear this a lot when you're a young mom, especially a new mom for the first time. It may be all the other moms that you hang out with, because it looks like they all have their act together and they know what they're doing when they're parenting. And you're like, I just hope they think I'm doing a good job, which, based on what I hear, none of y'all have a clue what you're doing when you're parenting. I certainly don't. So, that's okay, but it still feels like some pressure, right? I don't know who it is, but we all have a tendency to look to someone or a group of someone's to get approval, to try to feel like we are measuring up and we're doing okay. That's natural and it's normal, but here's the problem. That can be a constant pressure. It can feel like no matter what you do, it's never quite enough. You can never reach the point where you feel like, oh yeah, I'm good. And that is a really, really difficult way to navigate through life. Never feeling certain that you're good enough, never feeling certain that you measure up, never feeling certain that you arrive. So, is there a different way to approach life and enjoy life and do great at life and be ambitious and be driven and achieve all the stuff, but not do it because you're driven by the pressure? Today is week 2 of a series we started last week. The series is called Revolutionary. We're talking about the empowering invitation of the cross, and I'll explain more in a minute of what I mean by that. The cross is the most recognized symbol in the world. Whether you're a Christian or not, you understand that. I think it's also the most misunderstood symbol in the world, and I think it's misunderstood by Christians, at least Christians in the 21st century, because when we think of the cross, we think of a way of believing. Well, yeah, I got this belief system, or, I prayed this prayer and believed these certain things, so I'm good. But in the first century, when Jesus introduced this idea, it was not a way of believing. It was a way of living. It was entirely different. It was a way of living. It was a lose-win, alternative, but certainly not intuitive, revolutionary way of living. It was a way of living that flipped everything that we think about this world and everything that we think about life upside down. And again, I think for most of us, even those of us who call ourselves church people or call ourselves Christians, we tend to misunderstand this because we think of the cross and, how to go about that as well. It's just a one and done kind of deal, right? That's what this is all about. I'm going to pray a salvation prayer. If you grew up in church, you heard this. Pray a salvation prayer. If you really want to go the extra mile, you get baptized for bonus points. Abby just scored some a minute ago, okay? You get baptized for bonus points, and then it's okay, I'm back to the real world. But here is the problem. Here's the problem. When you go back to the real world, you go back to the pressure, and you go back to feeling like you don't measure up, and you go back to wondering if you're okay, and you go back to trying to find meaning, value, and worth and approval from individuals or groups of individuals who may or may not give you what you actually want. But when Jesus showed up, he said, I have a different way for you to live. And yet it is so counterintuitive because it is a lose-win way. It is not a win-lose way of life. Let me remind you that the symbol for Jesus is not a checkered flag, it's not a crown, and it's not a trophy. It is a cross, which is a symbol of suffering. It's a symbol of pain. It's a symbol of loss. And yet he showed up and invited people into that way of life. How in the world did that ever catch on? How in the world are we here 2,000 years later still talking about it? Because who wants to join the losers club? Who wants to say, yes, I would like to sign up for a way of life where I know I'm going to lose and there's probably suffering and pain involved? But that's what he invited people into because his way of life, according to him, was a lose but then win way of life. It was a better way of life. And so what I want to do today is spend the next few minutes unpacking, hopefully as clearly as I can, a little bit more of what I mean by that, because it can be so confusing because who lives that way? I mean, we don't see this modeled. Nobody thinks this way. This is certainly revolutionary, not just in his time, but in ours. So the best way I know to describe it is I actually want to take you to what maybe the most famous first century follower of Jesus wrote about this. You've heard of him, whether you're a church person or not. Everybody's heard of Paul in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Well, the Apostle Paul started out living his life like all of us live our lives, as if it's a win-lose game, as if it's a zero-sum game. And so he was in a religious group called the Pharisees, and he was trying as best he could to work his way up, to achieve, to accomplish. He was trying to find the approval and the affirmation of a group of people, so he felt like he measured up. I mean, he was in a religious context, but he was doing what all of us do, to the point, matter of fact, that he actually referred to himself as a best-in-class Pharisee. He's going, I am as good as it comes when it comes to following all the religious rules. I outwork and I'll out-obey everybody who's trying to do what I'm trying to do. But then if you know much about his story, he meets a resurrected Jesus, completely changes his life, and to use the language of Jesus, which eventually became the language of the Apostle Paul, he said, I quit chasing the kingdoms of this world. I quit playing the win-lose game, and I began to chase the kingdom of God, which is a lose-win, way of the cross kind of living. And he spent the rest of his life going around to people explaining this way of life and inviting them into what he would argue was a better way of life. But it was so foreign. It was somewhat foreign to Jewish people. It was completely foreign to non-Jewish people. As a matter of fact, there's a letter he wrote to new Jesus followers in the city of Corinth. So these are Greek people. If you know much about Greek people, you know what drove Greek culture back then. I mean, they had their philosophy and they had the intellectualism and all of that. But they also had the Olympics. I mean, it was a highly competitive culture. Everything in their culture was win-lose, win-lose, win-lose. And this life is what mattered most. And so Paul's trying to introduce a new way of life to them that makes no sense. And what I love about it, it's very early in his letter, he just acknowledges this. Here's part of what he writes. He says, for the message of the cross is foolishness. It's foolishness. He goes, I understand. If you're looking at life as if it is a win-lose, zero-sum, what happens in this world is what matters most, and that's all that matters to you. If you're looking at life from that perspective, which is natural for all of us, he says, I recognize when I come in here and I'm telling you, no, Jesus invites you into a different lose-win, way of the cross kind of living. He said, I get it. It's totally crazy. It's backwards. It just sounds foolish to you. He says it's foolish. The message of the cross is foolishness for this reason. It's foolishness to those who are perishing. Now, I need to explain this because this may give you some insight that you have not had before. The word perishing here literally means fading away. So this is what Paul's trying to help them understand. He's going, you are living your life the way everybody else around you lives your life. You're living your life as if this life is what matters most. And it's the only thing that matters, and everything's a zero sum. If you win, I lose. If I win, you lose. I got to get whatever I can get kind of life. He says, I understand that. He says, the problem is, you think it's foolish when I'm introducing this other way, but here's the problem. The problem is, when you live your life that way, you are trying to extract value, meaning, and worth from things that are literally fading away. This was his point. He's trying to help all of us understand when you live life the way it's normal to live life, you find yourself clinging onto things and trying to earn approval and acceptance from things that are literally fading away. They're not going to last. So he's going, I know the way I'm telling you to live sounds so foolish. I would argue to cling to try to extract value from something, meaning from something, significance from something that is not going to last, it's going to deteriorate, that's going to fade away. He says, I would argue that is more foolish than embracing the way that Jesus introduced to the world. Now, this might explain something that, looking at this crowd, only about a fourth of you understand. So the rest of you, I'll have to explain it. There is a thing about the middle of life for all you people under 40. There's a thing that comes somewhere in the middle of life, usually in your 40s, maybe in your 50s, called a midlife crisis. Okay? Yeah, midlife crisis. You know what happens in a midlife crisis? Guys going by Corvettes. That's part of what happens, but there's more to it than that. Let me explain what happens in a midlife crisis. A midlife crisis is when an individual has lived long enough to realize, oh no, the things that I have poured my entire life into because I thought that's where I was going to find approval, that's where I was going to get meaning and value and worth. A midlife crisis is when they have lived long enough to go, that actually is fading away. That actually is not delivering what I thought it was going to. Here I've been chasing this, and this has been so valuable to me. My reputation, my achievements, my health, my beauty, you name it, my possessions, whatever it is. Oh no, I have been chasing something that I am watching start to fade away right before my eyes. Or in some cases, they realize I haven't gotten to it, and I realize I'm not ever going to get to it, and there's no point in getting to it. And it is an incredibly hopeless, discombobulating, y'all didn't have that word on your bingo card today, did you? Discombobulating way of life. Because when you get to that point, that's why it's a crisis. A midlife crisis is just realizing, I've been chasing something that will not deliver what I thought it was going to deliver. Now, that's exactly what the Apostle Paul was referring to. He's going, you get far enough down the road, suddenly you realize that thing that you thought was so important is fading or will fade away, and you're going to be left with nothing. The problem is, for most people who hit a midlife crisis, once they realize thing A is fading away and not delivering, they let go of it, but then they start chasing thing B, which also will eventually fade away, and they just don't realize it at the moment. They go from one temporary fading away thing to another. And the Apostle Paul is going, no, there is a better way to live. You actually don't have to go through a midlife crisis. If you're smart enough to live your life in such a way that you are chasing after something that will not fade away. That if you are looking for approval and acceptance from the right place, from the right one, and not the wrong one or the wrong group of someones. He says, for the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are just fading away. But, he says, to those of us who are being saved. Now, just for all the church people in the room, we see being saved and we think, again, pray a salvation prayer. That's what we think. This is not what he's referring to at all. What he's referring to is those of us who have decided to embrace the way of the cross, and we are being saved from the futile, foolish, meaningless pursuit of things that will fade away right before our eyes. He's going, no, if you have been saved from chasing something that is never going to deliver what you want, chasing something where you never feel like it's enough, chasing something where you feel like you're in a race without a finish line and there's constant pressure. He says, if you feel like you have figured out how to stop chasing that and to embrace Jesus' way of the cross, well, guess what? You're being saved. To those of us who stop chasing and embrace the way of the cross, who are being saved, he says it is the power of God. It's the power of God. What in the world does he mean by that? Well, he's referring to this kingdom of God way of living, as he would say it. And I'll try to explain it as simply as I know how. His point is this: as long as you are looking to anyone or anything to give you acceptance, affirmation, value, meaning, worth, as long as you're looking to anyone or anything that's going to fade away, you are living life under your own power and in your own power. You're calling all the shots. You're doing the deal. You're trying to figure it out. You're trying to make the best choices. When you play the zero-sum, win-lose, this world is what matters most, I'm going to grab as much as I can way of life, it is all up to you. But he says, when you embrace the way of the cross, when you embrace a lose-win way of living, something extraordinary happens. Every time you choose to lose, it opens the door for the power of God to be at work in you. Because what did Jesus promise? Jesus promised that those of us who choose to follow him, he places his spirit inside of us. Now, just because you have God's spirit in you doesn't mean the power of God is at work in you. I'll explain that. You got to cooperate with him. But when you choose the lose-win way of Jesus, it makes possible and accessible the power of God to work in your life on a daily basis. You say, okay, great, but what in the world does that look like? Well, let me give you some examples. Last week I gave you this one. We'll start back here. Anytime you look at anything Jesus said to do, if you actually do what he says, it will always feel like a loss on the front end. This is why very few of us actually do most of what he said, because we don't like to lose. And it feels like a loss, and we don't feel like we'll win, so we don't trust him enough to lose and believe that his power is going to work a win out of it. So we avoid it. Example, when somebody hurts you, what Jesus says to do is choose forgiveness. Well, very clearly, forgiveness feels like a loss. If you hurt me and I choose not to hold it against you, I choose to cancel the debt, that feels like I'm letting you off the hook. It feels like a loss. But Paul's point is this: the promise is if you trust Jesus enough to do what he asks, to forgive, even though it feels like a loss, something happens. The power of God intersects with your choice to trust him, with your choice to lose. And what does he do? He brings healing and freedom to you. And so you actually win. On the other hand, if I choose to do what feels like a win, which is revenge or hold a grudge, whatever that is, I feel like I win on the front end, but I end up losing because I do not allow the power of God to do what only the power of God can do in my life, and I end up walking through life with bitterness and resentment and anger. It's a win-lose way. It's not a lose-win. The only way God's power has the freedom to do what he wants to do in you and through you is if you choose to trust him enough to lose, to do what he asks you to do, even though it feels like a loss. Here's another example. We talk about generosity. All of us want to be generous people. Very few of us are actually generous people. And the reason is because to be generous like Jesus instructed his followers to be generous feels like a huge loss. Every time you practice generosity, it feels like a loss. So as much as we want to be generous, that's who we want to be, I'm going to choose not to be generous. I'm going to choose to win. And you know what the win feels like, or what the win is? It's greed. Now, we don't call it greed because that sounds terrible. So we come up with better ways to, explain away our decisions. But the reality is, I'm just being greedy because it feels like a win for me. But then it never allows the power of God to do what only God can do in my life so that I become a generous person and I win in the end. And instead, my greed ends up impacting relationships down the road here. And I don't even always connect the dots and understand why that happened, but I cut God out of being able to work in that situation. Here's another one. Have you ever been in a situation where you were tempted to lie? The answer is yes. All of us have been there. Why were you tempted to not tell the truth? Because lying felt like winning in that moment. Some of you are in this situation now where you're like, yep, if I just don't tell them the truth or the whole truth right here, it will feel like a win. I get that. To tell the truth, to practice integrity, always feels like a loss on the front end because it cost us something. But Paul's point is there is a promise from your Heavenly Father that if you choose to lose on the front end, to do the thing that cost you something, then it frees His Spirit to work, His power to be at work in that situation. And you will win in the long run. Lie on the front end, you feel like you won. But we've all been down this road and know, give it enough time, and we lose. I could go on and on. This is true for every single thing Jesus asked us to do. Feels like a loss to do it. But by choosing to lose, you unlock the ability for God's power to work and bring about a win. And you unlock the ability of God's Spirit to make you the person you actually most want to be, to produce in you the qualities you most want to have. This is what Paul told the Galatians. You're probably familiar with this. He said, but the fruit of the Spirit, when you actually let His power work in you, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. It's what it is. This is what He produces. This is who we want to be, isn't it? This is what we want to do. But you have to approach a life as a lose-win endeavor. In other words, you have to trust Jesus enough to do what He asks, to allow His Spirit to work in you. So I want to leave you with two questions today. The first question is simply this. Do you want to experience the power of God in your life? If the answer is no, I have great news. You don't have to do anything different. Congratulations. You can just walk out of here and keep living like you're living, and you can make life a zero-sum, win-lose game, and you'll be just fine. But you will miss this. If the answer is yes, then you have to make the hard choice to trust Jesus enough to choose to lose and to do what He says. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think of a situation that you're navigating right now. Maybe a relationship, maybe a conflict, it may be something financial, maybe something at work or at school, I don't know. Maybe a decision coming up. Here's what I know. You're like me. You are very clear in what you want to do in those decisions or in those situations. Very clear. We don't have any trouble figuring out what a win looks like for us. But before you make whatever decision that you're going to make, before you handle the situation how you're going to handle it, ask yourself this question. What would choosing to lose look like in this situation? What would choosing to lose, choosing to trust Jesus enough, you will do what you know He would do if He were here? What would that look like for you? And are you willing to do it? Do you trust Him enough to do what He says, believing it will unlock the ability, it will open the door to God's power being able to work and take a loss, what feels like a loss, and turn it into a win? That is a choice only you can make and only I can make. But the kind of person you become, where you end up in life, the kind of relationships you have, will depend on your answer to that question. Live life as a zero-sum win-lose game, as if what you see is what matters most and this world's all there is. You can do that, and it's natural. I mean, you're not going to stick out. Everybody's doing that. But you will live your whole life with a pressure, a constant pressure to try to measure up. You'll live your life always wondering, am I okay? Have I done enough? Am I where I need to be? You'll live your life looking to extract value, meaning, worth, and approval from people and things that will eventually fade away. Or you can choose the lose-win way of the cross way of living. And Jesus says you can trade all of that pressure for His power, because now you can live looking up. And the only approval you care about is the approval of the one who created you. And you'll realize you're good with Him, so you're good. You're okay with Him, so you're okay. And you will experience the power of God at work in you. And you'll begin to understand experientially what it means to embrace a lose-win, way of the cross kind of life. Let me pray for us. Father, I know for some of us with the situations that we're in the middle of right now, it just feels impossible. It feels impossible to choose to trust you and lose in that relationship or in that conflict or in that financial situation. It feels impossible to choose to lose in that family tension. And it is. That's the whole point. It is impossible for us to do it on our own. But thank you for promising to give us your spirit and your power to follow through when we choose to lose and to turn what feels like a loss into a win time and time and time again. So help us have the wisdom to know what to do with that, the courage to do it even though it can be so hard. Thank you. Thank you for loving us unconditionally and inviting us to get our sense of worth and value and meaning from one who loves us so deeply. It's in your name we pray.
Hey, if you'd like more content like this, subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our Journey app to access all of our recent message content. And our app is the easiest way to share this content with a friend. For more information on our church or to find our app or our YouTube channel, just visit journeycalway.com. That's journeycalway.com. Thanks for listening.